cold, stark glow of the moon hung in the sky like a ghostly sentinel, a reminder of humanity's first steps on its surface. The last time anyone had touched that desolate terrain was in 1972, during the Apollo 17 mission. Decades later, the lunar surface lay silent and unmoved, as if it had swallowed the dreams of all those who dared to reach for the stars. But beneath its ancient dust and shadows, something stirred, a restless echo of a past long buried. Dr. Emily Carter, an astrophysicist at NASA, had spent her career gazing at the stars and unraveling the mysteries of the universe. She was part of a new initiative to revisit the moon, a project aimed at establishing a permanent human presence there. The world was buzzing with excitement. There were talks of lunar bases and the potential for mining helium-3, a powerful energy source. But beneath that enthusiasm lay a chilling undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, whispers of the unknown. The rumors began circulating in hushed tones among the scientists, reports of strange anomalies detected by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Flickering lights, unusual formations, and patterns that seemed too structured to be natural. Some dismissed them as mere artifacts of the imaging technology. Others felt an inexplicable chill at the thought of what those anomalies could imply. The deeper Emily delved into the data, the more her skepticism faded, replaced by a gnawing unease. On a particularly stormy night, Emily sat alone in her cluttered office, the walls adorned with posters of celestial phenomena and framed photographs of astronauts. The room was dimly lit, the glow of her computer screen illuminating the worried lines etched on her face. As the wind howled outside, she reviewed the latest data, her brow furrowing as she noted the anomalies' increasing frequency. They appeared to pulse like a heartbeat, a rhythm of something alive beneath the moon's surface. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from her colleague, Dr. Thomas Jensen, lit up the screen. "Meet me in the lab. Urgent." The gravity of the message sent a shiver down her spine. What could be so urgent at this hour? With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, she grabbed her jacket and headed towards the lab, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors of NASA's Johnson Space Center. The lab was dimly lit, the hum of machines providing a low, mechanical heartbeat. Thomas stood by the large screen displaying the lunar images, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Emily, you have to see this," he urged, gesturing her over. As she approached, she felt a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the temperature. The images on the screen were mesmerizing, yet unsettling. "What are we looking at?" she asked, trying to suppress the rising anxiety in her chest. "Last week, the lunar orbiter captured this," Thomas said, zooming in on a series of images depicting a strange formation. It was a structure, almost like a building, but unlike anything found on Earth. Angular and dark, it loomed against the moon's pale surface. "It's not natural. Look at the symmetry. This has to be artificial." Emily leaned closer, her heart racing. "Could it be a remnant of the Apollo missions? Something we overlooked?" she suggested, though a part of her resisted that possibility. The Apollo missions were comprehensive. They had left no stone unturned. "No," Thomas replied, shaking his head. "This wasn't here during the Apollo missions. We checked. This structure appeared within the last few years." A sense of dread washed over Emily. "But why didn't we detect it earlier?" "Perhaps it's not something we want to find," Thomas whispered, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone or something to overhear. "Some believe it's a warning, a sentinel watching us. Others think we should never have left the moon." Emily's mind raced. The tales she had heard as a child came flooding back. Stories of explorers who had ventured too far into the unknown, only to find horrors beyond comprehension. She recalled the legends of the lunar wailing, a sound reported by astronauts dismissed as psychological effects of isolation. But What if it was something more? "Do you think we should tell the higher-ups?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I already did," Thomas admitted, running a hand through his hair. They dismissed it as nonsense. They're focused on the future, on establishing a lunar base, on pushing the boundaries of exploration, but we can't ignore this. The tension in the room thickened. Emily felt a sense of urgency building within her. The structure, whatever it was, couldn't be left unchecked. The moon had secrets, and they were ready to be uncovered. "We need to go back," she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to investigate this ourselves. If there's something out there, we have to know what it is." Thomas met her gaze, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "But what if it's dangerous? What if we find something we're not ready for? We can't let fear dictate our actions. We owe it to the future of space exploration to find out," she insisted, her resolve hardening. As they stood in the dimly lit lab, the weight of their decision hung heavily in the air. A decision that would set them on a path toward a truth best left buried. The next several weeks were a whirlwind of preparation and secrecy. Emily and Thomas worked tirelessly, gathering a small team of trusted colleagues, each one handpicked for their expertise and discretion. They formed a covert mission, Lunar Echo, designed to investigate the mysterious structure that had captured their imaginations and instilled fear in their hearts. As the launch date approached, tension buzzed like static in the air. Emily could feel the weight of their secret pressing down on her. Even her closest friends at NASA were unaware of the mission's true purpose. The higher-ups believed they were merely testing new technology and equipment for future lunar expeditions. When the day finally arrived, the team assembled at the launch site, excitement and apprehension mingling as they boarded the spacecraft. As the engines roared to life, Emily peered out the small window, her heart racing. The Earth, a brilliant blue orb, shrank beneath them, and for a moment, she felt untethered from reality, soaring into the unknown. The journey through space was exhilarating, but the unease never fully left her. The closer they got to the moon, the more Emily felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to arrive. Upon entering the moon's orbit, the spacecraft's instruments lit up with data readings. Emily's fingers danced across the control panel as she processed the information. "We're getting significant energy readings from the structure," she announced, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's emitting a low-frequency signal, almost like a pulse." "Let's land nearby and investigate," Thomas suggested, his voice tense with excitement. The team descended towards the surface, the lunar landscape sprawling before them, an endless sea of grey and white dust. As they touched down, the stark silence enveloped them, broken only by the hum of machinery. Equipped with state-of-the-art tools and a wealth of scientific knowledge, the team set out towards the enigmatic structure. The closer they got, the more unsettling it became. It loomed before them, an imposing silhouette against the pale landscape. The structure was larger than they had anticipated, its surface pitted and worn, but the symmetry remained unnaturally perfect. "What is it?" one of the crew members whispered, awe and fear mingling in their voice. "An observation post, a research facility," Emily suggested, though doubt gnawed at her. The structure seemed too alien, too surreal. It felt like a monument to something far beyond their understanding. As they reached the entrance, a heavy metal door loomed before them, adorned with strange symbols that flickered under the light of their helmets. They tried to decipher the markings, but the language was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The air around them felt charged, as if they had stepped into a realm of energy and intention. "Should we go in?" another crew member asked, hesitating at the threshold. "We came here for answers," Emily replied, pushing aside her own fears. "We have to know what's inside." With a collective breath, they entered the structure. the door hissing open to reveal a dark corridor. The air was stale, thick with the scent of metal and decay. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness, a stark contrast to the silence of the moon outside. As they explored deeper into the building, the lights flickered on, revealing a vast chamber filled with strange machinery and screens, most of which were dark and dormant. It felt like they had stumbled upon a long-abandoned control center, a place where knowledge had once thrived, but had now succumbed to the passage of time. "What happened here?" Thomas murmured, running his fingers over the dusty consoles. "Was this part of a mission we didn't know about?" Emily's gaze fell upon a large viewport overlooking the lunar landscape. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing to the far wall, which was lined with panels displaying images of the moon's surface. But as she examined the images closer, a chilling realization washed over her. "These aren't just images," she breathed. "They're live feeds." The screens displayed various locations across the moon, some familiar from their own exploration, but others revealed unexplored areas, filled with strange formations and flickering lights. It was a surveillance network, watching and recording the moon in ways they had never imagined. "What were they monitoring?" another team member asked, his voice trembling with unease. Before Emily could respond, a loud hum reverberated through the chamber, causing the lights to flicker. A nearby screen flickered to life, displaying a series of coded messages that seemed to scroll across the surface. Emily stepped closer, trying to decipher the symbols, but they were foreign and incomprehensible. Then, as if responding to her presence, the hum grew louder, resonating deep within her bones. The screen shifted, displaying a series of images, astronauts from the Apollo missions, their faces filled with wonder and excitement. But then the images distorted, replaced by flashes of chaos and darkness. "Emily, look!" Thomas shouted, pointing to the screen. The imagery transformed into static, revealing fleeting glimpses of figures, shadowy and indistinct, moving in and out of focus. They seemed to whisper, their voices barely audible, echoing in the chamber like distant ghosts. "What is happening?" another crew member exclaimed, panic creeping into their voice. The lights began to flicker violently, and the humming morphed into a cacophony of sound, a maddening symphony of whispers and screams. Emily felt her heart race as she struggled to comprehend what was unfolding before them. "Get out! We have to leave!" she shouted, fear gripping her as she turned toward the exit. But the chamber felt alive, the walls pulsating with an energy that held them in place. Suddenly, the lights exploded in a blinding flash, plunging the room into darkness. The hum turned into a roar, a deafening sound that vibrated through the very core of their beings. Emily and her team stumbled backward, disoriented, as shadows danced around them, growing more distinct, more menacing. Then, as quickly as it had begun, everything went silent. The lights flickered back to life, revealing a scene that left them breathless. The chamber was empty. The screens were dark, and the machines lay still. It was as if they had witnessed a haunting, a glimpse into a reality they were never meant to see. "What just happened?" Thomas gasped, his face pale. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice shaky. "But we need to leave, now." As they retraced their steps towards the exit, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Something was watching them, lurking in the shadows, waiting for them to uncover more than they were meant to. As they stepped outside, the pale moonlight bathed them, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. In that moment, they knew that whatever they had uncovered, it was only the beginning. The moon had secrets, dark, terrifying secrets, that should have remained buried in its ancient dust. As the team hurried back to their lander, the atmosphere was thick with tension and fear. Emily's mind raced with questions that spiraled like a dark galaxy in her thoughts. What had they just witnessed? What were the shadows that seemed to pulse and writhe in the dark corners of that structure? Had they stumbled upon a relic of an ancient civilization? Or was it something far more sinister? The lander stood waiting for them, a fragile shell in the vast emptiness of the lunar surface. As they boarded, the weight of the night pressed down on them. The familiar hum of the spacecraft provided a small comfort, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of impending dread. They were not alone on the moon, and whatever was lurking in the shadows had its eyes fixed firmly on them. "Run diagnostics," Emily barked at the systems engineer, her voice sharp. "I want to know if anything's been tampered with." As the crew worked to power up the systems, Emily stood by the viewport, her heart pounding. The desolate landscape stretched out before her, the craters and valleys a stark reminder of their isolation. The moon had always felt like a silent witness to humanity's ambition, but now it felt like a tomb, a place where secrets lay buried beneath the dust, waiting to be uncovered. "Emily, look!" Thomas pointed outside. "What is that?" She turned her gaze back to the surface. A faint glimmer caught her eye, a series of lights flickering in the distance, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. It was coming from the direction of the structure they had just explored. "We need to investigate," Emily insisted, her instincts kicking in. They had come too far to turn back now. "Are you crazy?" another crew member interjected, his voice trembling. "Whatever that was back there, we need to get off this rock." But Emily felt a deep-seated urgency. They had to understand what was happening. "We can't leave without answers," she replied, her tone unwavering. "This could be a breakthrough for humanity. We owe it to everyone back on Earth to find out what's happening." As the team reluctantly agreed, they set off again, the lander's engines firing up as they navigated toward the flickering lights. The tension in the air was palpable, each member of the team acutely aware of the fragile barrier between them and the unknown. When they arrived at the location, the scene before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The lights were emanating from a cluster of bizarre formations that jutted from the lunar surface. Sharp, angular structures that seemed to defy physics. Emily's heart raced as she noted the symmetry and design, a stark contrast to the chaotic beauty of the surrounding landscape. "Are those, structures?" one crew member asked, squinting at the bizarre shapes. "I don't know," Emily replied, stepping cautiously toward them. "But we need to get closer." As they approached, she noticed that the lights were not static. They pulsed in unison, as if responding to an unseen force. The colors shifted: blue, red, green, casting eerie shadows across the ground. It was mesmerizing and horrifying at the same time, an alien dance that drew them closer. "What do you think they are?" Thomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe they're a form of communication," Emily suggested, the scientist in her desperately grasping for explanations. "Or perhaps they're a warning." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, sending a jolt through their bodies. The structures responded to the disturbance, their lights flashing violently, creating an atmosphere of chaos. Emily's heart raced as she stumbled backward, fear coursing through her veins. "Get back, everyone! Back to the lander!" she shouted, adrenaline kicking in as she turned to flee. The team scrambled away, but as they retreated, Emily glanced back at the glowing formations. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of something moving within the light. A shadow darting between the structures, too quick to identify. Panic surged through her. "Did you see that?" she gasped, her voice trembling. There was something there. The ground shook again, and the lights began to flicker erratically, casting ominous shadows that danced around them. The air grew thick with energy, and Emily felt a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. They reached the lander just in time, jumping inside and sealing the hatch behind them. The familiar sounds of machinery were a small comfort, but outside the chaos raged on. The lights continued to pulse, and the ground trembled as if responding to some ancient command. "Run diagnostics again," Emily ordered, her voice steady despite the fear roiling within her. "We need to get out of here." The systems engineer rushed to the control panel, his fingers flying over the buttons. Everything looks normal, but there's a strange interference coming from those structures. It's affecting our systems. Emily's heart sank. "Can we launch?" "I don't know. The engines are primed, but I can't guarantee we'll have full control." The weight of their situation settled heavily upon her. They had uncovered something incredible, but it was wrapped in a shroud of danger. As the lights outside flickered wildly, she made a decision. "Prepare for launch. We're going to take off regardless. We have to get back to Earth and warn everyone about this." With a collective breath, the team scrambled to their positions. Emily's heart raced as the countdown began. The sounds of the engines roaring to life reverberating through the lander. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving behind more than just an alien structure. They were leaving behind secrets that should never have been unearthed. As the lander roared to life, Emily felt a rush of adrenaline, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. The countdown ticked down, each number echoing in the confined space, a relentless reminder of their fragile existence. Outside, the flickering lights pulsed like a heartbeat, as if bidding them farewell, or perhaps warning them to stay. "Launch in 3, 2, 1, liftoff." The lander shuddered violently as the engines ignited, propelling them away from the moon's surface. The gravitational pull of the moon lessened, and they shot into the inky blackness of space. Emily felt a momentary relief as they broke free, the lights of the lunar structures shrinking into the distance. But deep down she knew this was far from over. The thrill of discovery mingled with an ominous sense of dread. What had they awakened? What had they seen that was never meant to be revealed? As the Earth grew larger in the viewport, the familiar blue and green hues offered comfort, but it was accompanied by an unsettling feeling that something was fundamentally changed, something they couldn't fully comprehend. "Prepare for re-entry," Thomas called, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions swirling around them. They worked together to set their trajectory, their hands moving mechanically, driven by adrenaline and instinct. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, turbulence rattled the spacecraft, causing alarms to blare. Emily gripped the control panel, her heart racing as they navigated through the fiery re-entry. The world outside transformed into a swirling blur of colours, the heat intensifying as they descended. "Stabilizing, adjusting angle," Thomas muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. The ship groaned beneath them, a metallic beast, enduring the onslaught of forces beyond its design. Emily's breath caught in her throat as they broke through the clouds, the familiar landscape of their home appearing beneath them. The lush greens of the earth felt like a distant dream compared to the harsh grey of the moon, but a chilling sensation crept into her heart. Had they truly escaped the darkness they had encountered? As the lander touched down, the impact sent a jolt through their bodies. They had made it. Against all odds, they had returned. But as the engines powered down, a heavy silence settled over them, leaving an echo of the moon's haunting pulse in their minds. "We need to report what we found," Emily said, the urgency in her voice betraying her calm exterior. "They have to know what's out there." The team disembarked, stepping onto the tarmac of the NASA facility, the world bustling around them. Technicians and scientists milled about, their faces a blend of concern and curiosity as they approached. "Welcome back, team. How was the mission?" one of the directors asked, clapping Thomas on the back. "It was enlightening," he replied, his eyes darting toward Emily, who stood slightly apart, feeling the weight of their secret heavy on her shoulders. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke. "We have to talk about what we found on the moon. There's something there, something that could change everything." The director raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident in his expression. You mean to tell me that after all these years, there's something we missed? Something significant? Yes, Emily insisted, her voice rising with urgency. There are structures on the moon that appear to be artificial. They're emitting signals and... Emily, calm down, the director interrupted, holding up a hand. You know how sensitive this information is. We'll need to debrief you and the team first. As they were ushered into a conference room, Emily felt a growing sense of dread. They were about to lay bare their discoveries, but she couldn't shake the feeling that no one would understand the gravity of their findings. The room was sterile, the walls adorned with screens displaying data and images from previous missions. As the team sat around the table, Emily's heart raced. She looked at each of her colleagues, their faces a mix of excitement and fear, and realized that the burden of truth weighed heavily on all of them. Let's start with a summary of your findings, the director prompted, leaning forward with interest. Emily took a deep breath, recounting their journey, how they had discovered the structure, the eerie lights, and the shadows that seemed to come alive in the darkness. She spoke of the surveillance feeds, the coded messages, and the pulsing energy that filled the chamber. As she spoke, she watched the expressions of her colleagues change. Skepticism morphed into intrigue, and fear settled like a heavy fog. We believe there's an intelligence on the moon, something that has been monitoring us for decades. A tense silence filled the room, punctuated only by the faint whir of machinery outside. The director exchanged glances with the other officials, his brow furrowing in thought. Do you have any evidence to support these claims? He asked, his tone measured, but filled with disbelief. Yes, Thomas chimed in, his voice steady. The live feeds, the data anomalies. We can present the data, Emily urged, her voice unwavering. But we need to act quickly. We can't ignore this. What you're suggesting is significant. If we're to pursue this, we'll need to approach it carefully, the director replied, steepling his fingers thoughtfully. We can't incite panic among the public. This information must be handled delicately. Emily felt frustration bubble within her. But we can't just bury it. We need to know what's out there. This is bigger than us. As discussions continued, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of something dark and profound. While the officials debated the best course of action, she felt the weight of her own discoveries bearing down on her. Days turned into weeks as they sifted through data and presented their findings to NASA's highest levels. The story began to circulate, twisted by speculation and fear, creating an undercurrent of paranoia that swept through the agency. Whispers of what lay on the moon circulated, and before long, Emily felt like she was in the eye of a storm. Then, one evening, Emily received a call that would change everything. She was summoned to a secure location, a small, dimly lit room, far removed from the hustle and bustle of NASA's main facilities. As she entered, she was met by a group of men in suits, their faces serious and inscrutable. Dr. Carter, thank you for coming, one of them said, his voice smooth yet edged with urgency. We've reviewed your findings and we need to discuss the implications of what you discovered on the moon. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. What implications? She asked, her heart racing. We believe the information you uncovered poses a national security risk. We cannot allow this to become public knowledge. What? You can't be serious, she exclaimed, disbelief washing over her. This is important. The world needs to know what we found. Your discoveries could incite widespread panic, another man interjected. We're considering a complete cessation of lunar missions until we can ascertain the nature of the threat. A cessation? Emily echoed, her voice rising. You can't stop exploration based on fear. We need to understand what's out there. As they debated the morality of their decision, Emily felt an intense frustration. They were choosing ignorance over discovery, allowing fear to guide their actions. But even as she argued for transparency, she sensed that they had already made up their minds. Dr. Carter, we appreciate your passion, but this is not a decision for you to make, one of the men stated flatly. We need to control the narrative. We will not allow the public to know about the structures you found. Emily's heart sank. They were planning to bury the truth, to silence the discoveries that could change the course of humanity's understanding of the universe. It was a choice she couldn't accept. Determined to reveal the truth, Emily spent countless nights poring over the data, looking for any way to bypass the agency's attempts to suppress her findings. She knew that the revelations they had uncovered on the moon were too significant to remain hidden, even if it meant risking her career. The whispers in the halls of NASA grew louder. The tension was palpable. Scientists began to turn on one another, suspicion hanging thick in the air. Emily could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down on her, suffocating her resolve. There were too many unanswered questions, too many shadows lurking just beyond the veil of understanding. One night, as she scoured through old records and mission data, she stumbled upon a series of classified documents buried deep within the archives. They contained reports from the Apollo missions, anomalies that had been recorded but never publicly acknowledged. There were references to strange sounds, flickering lights, and even shadowy figures observed by the astronauts during their lunar explorations. Emily's heart raced as she read through the reports, realizing that they had not been the first to encounter the unknown. The moon had held its secrets tightly, and the astronauts who had ventured there had returned with more than just lunar rocks. They had encountered something that had haunted their dreams and followed them back to Earth. With renewed determination, she reached out to Thomas and a few trusted colleagues, sharing her findings and the gravity of their situation. They agreed to help her, forming a small, clandestine group dedicated to unveiling the truth. "We need to gather more evidence," Thomas suggested, his eyes alight with a mix of fear and excitement. "If we can find a way to analyze the data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and cross-reference it with what we've experienced, we might uncover more about those structures." Emily nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "We could create a presentation to share with the public. If we make it undeniable, they won't be able to silence us." As they worked tirelessly, the tension within NASA continued to grow. Rumors of their investigation began to leak, and it was only a matter of time before the higher-ups caught wind of their rebellion. One evening, as they were finalizing their presentation, Emily received a message from an unknown source. It was cryptic, yet ominous. "They are watching. Do not trust anyone." Her heart sank. Who could have sent the message? Was it a warning? It felt like a heavy shroud of paranoia began to envelop her. She glanced at Thomas, whose brow furrowed in concern. They were in deeper than they had anticipated, and now they were becoming targets. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered, and the computers began to shut down one by one. Emily's pulse quickened as the screens went dark, the familiar hum of technology silencing into an eerie stillness. "Did you see that?" one of their colleagues whispered, panic rising in his voice. "We need to get out of here," Emily urged, the sense of dread flooding her senses. But as they moved to leave, the door swung open, revealing several men in suits, government agents with stern expressions and eyes that held no compassion. "Dr. Carter, you're coming with us," one of them commanded, stepping forward. "No, we're not going anywhere," Thomas shouted, instinctively placing himself between Emily and the agents. The agents moved quickly, apprehending Thomas and the others with a swift, practiced efficiency. Emily felt a cold chill run down her spine as they were led away, their dream of uncovering the truth slipping through their fingers. "Stop! You can't do this!" Emily shouted, her voice echoing in the sterile corridor. But her cries fell on deaf ears as they were taken deeper into the heart of the facility. They found themselves in a dimly lit room, devoid of windows and filled with cold metal. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the agents stood around them, their expressions inscrutable. "Your findings are a threat to national security," one of the agents said, his voice flat. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Emily felt her heart race. "We're trying to warn you. There's something on the moon, something significant." "You will cease all investigation," the agent replied sternly. "Failure to comply will have severe consequences." As they were escorted out, Emily felt a surge of determination. They might have silenced her for now, but she wouldn't give up. The truth was too important. The moon had secrets, and they would not be allowed to bury them. Days turned into weeks, and Emily found herself trapped in a cycle of fear and frustration. The government agents had kept a close watch on her, their presence a constant reminder that she was not free to pursue the truth. They had isolated her from her colleagues, stifling any attempts to share their discoveries. But Emily refused to be silenced. She turned her attention to the information she had gathered, organizing it meticulously in secret. She reached out to journalists, scientists, and researchers who had been critical of the government's handling of lunar exploration, hoping to find allies in her quest for the truth. Then, one fateful night, she received an anonymous tip, an invitation to meet at an undisclosed location. The message urged her to come alone, claiming it was a chance to finally share what they had uncovered. A mixture of excitement and apprehension coursed through her as she contemplated the risks. With a pounding heart, she decided to go, knowing it could be her only opportunity to reveal the truth about the moon. The meeting place was a dimly lit cafe tucked away from the bustling city, a safe haven for those who sought answers. As she entered, she spotted a figure sitting alone in a corner booth. He was older, with greying hair and sharp eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "Dr. Carter," he greeted, gesturing for her to sit. "Thank you for coming." "Who are you?" Emily asked, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. "I'm someone who has been following your work," he replied, leaning closer. "I've been in the field for decades, and I know the truth about what's happening on the moon." Emily's heart raced. "What do you mean? What do you know?" "I know about the structures you found, the shadows you encountered. They were never just remnants of an ancient civilization. They are alive. Something has been awakened on the moon, and it's watching." The words sent a chill down her spine. But what does it want? Why were we chosen to see it? It's a warning. The structures were designed to monitor humanity's progress, and they've been waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But we've been too careless. We've ignored the signs, and now the balance has shifted. Emily felt a surge of fear and confusion. What do we do? We need to spread the word, to prepare for what's coming. The moon is not just a lifeless rock, it's a sentinel, and it will not allow humanity to forget its presence. "But the government," Emily began, but he interrupted her. "They will try to suppress the truth, but we can't let them. You have evidence, use it. Go public with your findings. You have the chance to alert the world." As she listened, Emily felt a flicker of hope amidst the growing shadows. How do I do that? They're watching my every move. Find a way to release the information. Use secure channels. Reach out to those who will listen. The world needs to know what's at stake. With that, the man slid a flash drive across the table, his eyes intense. "This contains everything I've gathered. Records, classified documents, everything you need. But you must act quickly." Emily nodded, her resolve solidifying. "Thank you." As she left the cafe, the weight of the flash drive felt both liberating and terrifying. She had the truth in her hands, but revealing it would put her life at risk. Yet, the alternative was unthinkable. That night, she stayed up late, poring over the files, feeling the gravity of the knowledge she held. She was ready to confront the world and share the truth. With trembling hands, she composed an article detailing her findings and the evidence that supported their claims. She sent it to a reputable journalist known for exposing government conspiracies, praying it would reach the right audience. As she hit send, She felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. The die was cast, and there was no turning back. She had exposed the truth, and now it would be up to the world to decide what to do with it. Days passed in a blur of anxiety, her heart racing each time the news played. Then it happened. The article was published. The response was instantaneous, igniting a firestorm of debate and speculation. Media outlets clamoured for interviews. Scientists rushed to examine the data, and the public reacted with a mix of fear and curiosity. The government was forced to address the situation, their attempts to suppress the story backfiring spectacularly. Emily watched in disbelief as the world began to wake up to the truth she had fought so hard to unveil. But amidst the celebration, she also felt a deep sense of unease. The moon was still out there, its secrets still lingering in the shadows, and she knew they had only scratched the surface of something far more complex. In the days that followed, whispers of a new lunar mission began to circulate, with scientists eager to explore the structures she had uncovered. Emily was torn. Part of her was excited by the prospect of discovery, while another part felt a deep sense of dread. They were not ready for what lay beyond the veil. As she prepared for interviews and public appearances, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was far more complicated than anyone could understand. The moon had awakened, and with it, a new era of humanity's exploration of the cosmos had begun. But as she stared up at the moon each night, glimmering with an otherworldly light, she couldn't help but wonder what secrets it still held, waiting patiently for the right moment to be revealed, and whether humanity would ever be ready to face them.